3, 2, 1, start. Hey guys, I am currently in Vancouver. I'm here to see my family. We recently moved from Toronto, so I don't really know anyone here. I've just been sitting at home. But your boy's going back to Masters this year at UCL. Applied last September, and I thought it's a good time to, give an update on portfolio stuff. I applied to UCL in Cambridge. Luckily, I got into both. Good stuff. But yeah, the process was quite different. Cambridge was a lot more interested in writing and kind of research. UCL more on visuals and drawings and stuff like that. Because I am going to be showing my portfolio for this one, it's going to be more catered towards UCL because you're not going to see any of my writings. On a side note, me and my friends are very happy to schedule some tutoring sessions. If any of you guys are interested, we will have to charge a bit of money because we're all broke and living in London is very expensive. If you're okay with that, then hit us up. Before I get started, I just want to say that I've arranged my portfolio in a slightly unusual way. It's not best comes first, it's more in a chronological order, which I think might not have been the best choice by me. And also, I use a lot of full bleed pages. That is because I chose a movie as a huge part of my narrative and aesthetic reference. I've kind of tried to structure it in a more cinematic way in terms of each kind of image is like a scene in a movie. Let's get started. Why'd I have to piss so many times? All right, portfolio time. First page, I've just got my name, all the titles of my projects, time that I did them in. So yeah, as you can see, it's in chronological order. First one is the most recent one, which is a group competition that I did with 3 of my friends. This is a columbarium. I'm not gonna go too much about it because it's not the best project in my portfolio. What I mainly did for this page is kind of just photoshopping a bunch of splashes, drips, some people, flowers, shading the tree a little bit. We got Daddy Bjork's diagrams. I didn't do these diagrams, but my friend did an amazing job making the building easy to understand, and overall this page shows a bit more of kind of professional, practical, concise approach to architecture. Next, we've got line drawing side of that project. So it's just a combination of a few line drawings that I thought was the best from the 4 panels that we produced. Then I can't really show these because these are projects from working my main project, which is my 3rd year's final project. So I did this probably from
December of last year to January of last year.
Bruh, this is in 2001. Yes. It's in 2001. No, this is in... Yeah. So the first one, this is just a cover page for the project. The project is called 2024 and Nemo Odyssey. And if you're familiar with 2001 A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick, it's a movie and it's about a few astronauts going into space with their spaceship, which is controlled by an AI. And the main plot of the story, without spoiling it, is that the AI goes haywire and they end up being trapped in space. And this project takes that and combines it with a sequel, which is much less well known. It's called 2010, the year we made contact. And that movie is about a new spaceship going out there to kind of recover the spaceship that is trapped in another orbit. And the way my project takes inspiration from it is first through its aesthetics, from how the lighting works, and also how they go out there to collect the spaceship in an attempt to return it to Earth. So my project is about returning junk and space trash back into Earth in order to clear up our orbit, which is right now filled with, hundreds of millions of these little pieces of satellite fragments that travel at an insane speed of 40 kilometers per second. So that thing can shred through pretty much any metal or space station like it's just, piece of meaty sausage. And this image here shows my building, which is on the ocean, more specifically South Pacific Ocean. And this shows the deployment of these removed debris satellites. That's what their actual name is. These are designed and manufactured by NASA. Their entire purpose is to go out there into space and collect space trash and bring them back to Earth. And this image shows the ISS deploying them into space and them rolling slowly towards this decommissioned satellite in order to capture it and drag it back to Earth onto my building. This is an aerial plan view of my entire building in its final stage. This building responds to the oversaturation of space garbage. Nemo Space Archive is essentially a huge bulletproof vest that lies on the top of the ocean surface, and it allows any kind of debris to hit its surface and be cradled in it. Then the kind of scientist and the team goes out there and extracts them and builds a facility around them and reuses materials, because these space objects, especially space stations, are extremely expensive. For example, the ISS is worth $200 billion. So imagine if you can cover it in somewhat good condition, how much material you can extract and reuse from that. This picture would have been taken from space because the building is so large that I don't think you'd be able to capture it if it was from within our atmosphere. And this building is located at Point Nemo. So Point Nemo is the most remote location on Earth. So it is not marked by any kind of landmass. It is just a dot or a point, a coordinate in the ocean. And it is the most remote place on Earth because it is at least 3,000 kilometers away from any human habitation. So if you think about it, the satellites above us is closer to us than anywhere you'd ever be able to get to from this building while still being on land. In fact, it's so far that barely any animals live here because nutrients just can't get this far into the ocean. This is where I bring in Jules Verne's 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is another reference that I use. I mainly use that for its narrative, Captain Nemo. So his name is actually based on this location. Captain Nemo basically lives in this region and discovers, all kinds of insane technology and creates his own inventions, which will come later in this portfolio. See a bit more of connection to him. For the longest time, for decades, Point Nemo has been used as a satellite graveyard. NASA, SpaceX, the USSR has all been using this area for the disposal of their decommissioned satellites. So whenever a satellite goes out of power, they kind of designate them to re-enter the atmosphere as close as they can to this region because it's so far from many humans, so it causes the least disturbance. And having this place as my site gives me a lot of freedom in terms of size, also a good amount of restriction because there's no reason for the building to cater its shape to any infrastructure around it. So that's why it's kind of just a circle. So the purpose of this building, which is called the Nemo Space Archive, is to store and facilitate and repurpose and resell space objects. So this includes meteorites, satellites, space trash, and the building's size is actually based on the number of meteorites that hits the Earth and the Earth's surface area. So the size of this building theoretically guarantees that at least one meteorite will hit this building every year. So which I thought was interesting thing to drive the size of the building. So what you're seeing in kind of this image is the full building, first of all, and then some of its propellers that drag it in directions to avoid storms, some entry points. These are docking areas, a few facilities, maintenance areas around the propellers. These smaller dots are all of the previous impact areas where things have landed. So this would have been a stage of the building where it has been there for decades, if not centuries maybe. So the building doesn't kind of just land on the ocean in its full size right here. It grows from the center, so it would have been first just these bigger pads looking things. These are actually the main impact zones, which would be for designated re-entries. So this means any kind of satellites that can be directed to land at a more specific spot, then they will be sent down into these two zones, one for larger impacts and one for smaller. So these are kind of the most reinforced areas of the building. And the material used is graphene, which is a material that's 1,000 times stronger than steel, but also being 1,000 times thinner and more durable and malleable. So this entire building is essentially covered in this graphene sheet, while these areas are more reinforced. So the fragments will hit these zones, and then they will be dragged out onto the surrounding areas to be facilitated and studied, repurposed. And some more these kind of smaller spots on the edges would just be random landings that might have happened just by chance. That's basically the gist of it. It's basically a giant bulletproof vest that sits on the ocean and uses the water's tension to accommodate very heavy landings from space. The second shot is another aerial plan. This is more of a zoom in. This is a zoom in into this region. So this is one of the largest landing sites in the constellation. So this would have been to store one of the larger satellites, for example, a space station. In the project, I say that the ISS lands here in 2024, which is actually the plan. The ISS is going to go out of commission in 2024, and NASA has actually said that they will be directing it into Point Nemo for it to drown in the ocean. But what I say is that I have this sheet here, and it's going to capture the space station and store it and recycle its materials. The main area will be for storing the largest fragments, small areas that to accommodate the pieces which might land with it, following its trail down. And you can see kind of the routes connecting it to the different ones, and the main ring for stability as well as circulation. These are all made out of pontoons. So pontoons are these hollow plastic things, cubes. They don't have to be cubes. These hollow plastic things that help float on the ocean and to create a circulation for people to walk. Very good reference here is Crystal and Genie, which did a lot of installations that allowed people to walk on water using pontoons and fabric. And then next is a line drawing, pretty much of the previous render. This more accurately shows the different purpose of each areas. These annotations were very annoying to do. You see the main fragment here, smaller ones. good stuff. And there will be these facilities which accommodate scientists to study these materials around each site, as well as emergency evacuation zones, which can detach from the main structure, float away to safety. These are hangars which store helicopters and large maneuver machines like the crawlers to carry the fragments around and to lift anything from the big circular impact cushions. Docking areas for ships to access this outpost. I call this thing an outpost, by the way. This would be like the ISS outpost or the Mir outpost. I guess I was actually making this to contain Mir, which is the Soviet space station, similar to ISS, doesn't really matter. And then some energy facilities here that extract energy from the seabed, which you might be able to see better in the next few drawings. This drawing is very composition based. These dash-filled pads are actually underneath the outposts, so they will kind of prop it up a bit because how heavy fragments will be and facilities around it. So the smaller one will kind of go underneath this one, and the bigger pad will go underneath the main fragment. Next is a perspective visual. So this one is mostly for visual purposes to kind of more realistically visualize the building during an impact. You can see in the back, we got a fireball kind of flying towards the building. You can see the satellite here, the graphene fabric, which is supported by these columns. And right now they're not fully on. When I did this, I was saying that they were taken off to be cleaned and maintained. So this shows a half on, half off stage of the graphene layer. This one is the main interior shot of the main fragment. It's all pontoons supporting it, allowing people to walk on it. Columns supporting the roof, which is graphene sheets, and the main fragment in the center within its chamber that allows it to be lower down and safely stored in case of storms, bad weather, things like that. And a lot of tensioning cables that keep everything somewhat in place. A lot of the aesthetics of this image comes from 2001 Space Odyssey, especially its lighting, as well as some of its color. And then next, this is more progress work. So this goes before all of those final images that I just showed. So this is when Jules Verne come into place. He's the main dude that informed the portfolio narrative of the project, which is the fact that this whole building was first inspired by Jules Verne's sketches and his idea to create a constellation in this remote part of the ocean to help navigate based on what he saw on the shores. As you can see, these are kind of the photographs of lighthouses that he took. A man that lives in the middle of the ocean would have never seen these things, and he was like, oh wow, like they got lights to navigate ships. Why don't I have lights in the middle of the ocean to navigate myself? And this would have been a sketch done by him, which is just a sketch collage. I've done a lot of photoshopping to make the portfolio feel like it's a movie scene based on a story, less so than my intention to make a building that floats in the middle of the ocean. So he kind of had this idea to inhabit the ocean and have light posts installed. These are the sentinels, which are the light posts, but also they're able to spread this giant web under the ocean, which kind of gets closer to the building's program, kind of fishing satellites and kind of creating a little web that catches fishes from above, I guess, which is it's a bit of a mind boggler. This drawing is a lot of sketches collaged together and then dumped into Photoshop with some bit of water texture, I guess. Put down a bit of a map showing how these things drag from the center outwards to create this giant web hinting at possibility of the final building. And just a small thing like these annotations, these are kind of just my way of making it a bit more forensic and scientific. So you know how like Transformers, when they cut to a scene, they have like something come up that's like saying the time and date and location. And that's my way of doing that, to give a bit of information and to make it feel more believable. Next, the section is my line drawing. So these are more technical. I'm channeling a bit more of my structural engineer side. I actually think these look better as white lines on black. I've done the same thing here as the previous Captain Nemo sketch, which I've placed my drawing on top of a sheet. This, I think, makes it feel more real. It's almost like it's not my work. It's not me taking another scientist's study and making my design more rigorous by basing it off of previously done real looking work. I hope you get what I mean, because this feels more like a documentation you pull out of like an old archive. But in this image, you can see a bit clearer of the energy facilities I was talking about. So these will be kind of electricity storage tanks, and they're connected below to this giant OETC system, which is a thermal converter. So these things go down very far into the ocean bed, and they're positioned above thermal vents. So thermal vents are just these like giant holes in the middle of the ocean that emits a lot of heat. They even burn. And it takes the difference in temperature temperature from the surface of the water and the bottom of the seabed where the thermal vents are, and converts that temperature difference into electricity. So that's how the building sustains itself. They're very important to this. These are sea anchors used by a lot of ships to help them stay still in the ocean. And you can see the container, these propeller looking things basically help direct the current. Got the hydraulic columns, which can increase or decrease the tension of the graphene sheets. If an object is hitting with a very fast speed and you know it's coming, you will release the tension to allow the fabric to be able to flow more and for the impact to be more spread out. But if it's a good day and the weather's nice, then you kind of raise it up to have more transparency to reduce your light bills. And next we've got some more closer ups of the main satellite. So this is a make 2D of the model. But the rest of it is all drawing in Rhino. This is all a line drawing. It shows the pontoons being cut and also the kind of cushioning in the chamber. And on the right is a bit more detail, me trying to show that I somewhat understand how a hydraulic system works. So I just looked at a reference on the internet, like hydraulic columns, and then try to replicate that. Next up, we got some just detailed renders of the clamping system, which stabilizes the sheets, how the column kind of meets the sheets. This is a little maintenance lift on the right, helps people get up and down. This little infrastructure here is a stabilizer that helps pivot left and right. And this page is mainly just to show that I have done some research. It's a lot of bullshit. I'm kind of cluster bombing the entire page with charts and just some photographs showing that I've done some physical testing. It's just me dropping fishing weights on surfaces to see if they sink or not. And yeah, this is pretty much it. This is more my previous projects. This is my year 2 project, which is a hand drawing. This is kind of what the whole building looks like. It's a playground fitted with pneumatics, aka balloons, to lighten up the spirit of the site, and also to allow children to jump on top and feel like they're flying. There are actually these little wing things that children can wear. It's very badly done Photoshop here. They can basically wear these things like little angels, and you can jump on these bouncing pads. And everything is inflated by air. You can see the air tubes going through it. And the 2 big balloons at top. First one carries the children's little wing, so allows them to jump higher. And the second one lifts up this little air chamber that allows them to go up into the air. I actually got grilled a little bit in my interview about this one. He asked me if I thought this building looked friendly to children. As a confident man, I said yes, and he just laughed. So I guess he didn't think that way. Final page, just some models I've done throughout the years. Add a bit of diversity to my very graphic / drawing based portfolio. Yeah, a few models I made in previous years. I actually wore this thing. This is meant for people to wear. Yeah, it's supposed to lighten up my body parts. It's probably my favorite model, but it's a bit hard to explain. It's supposed to guide your hand into different gestures. But yeah, that's my portfolio. That's all.